Next up, it's Movie Spotlight, our weekly segment where we invite our esteemed film critics to give us their recommendations on what to watch this weekend among the new releases, either at the cinema or on streaming platforms online. And they're here with us now. First, we have with us Jason Bechervaise. Jason, hello, it's good to see you.
Hello, Joe.
And we also have with us Darcy Paquet as well. Darcy, hello to you too.
Hi, happy to be here.
Okay, so we have one Hollywood release and one local indie film in our lineup today. And we start with the Hollywood release. And Jason, it is your recommendation. It's a drama called May December, starring Natalie Portman and Julianne Moore. It has the same alliterated title in Korean, May December, and it is directed by the American auteur Todd Haynes. So, Jason, what more can you tell us?
Yeah, so this is the latest, like you said, by Todd Haynes. He made a number of acclaimed films, including Carol a few years ago, which was very much warmly embraced by Korean viewers. So yeah, it's produced and starring Natalie Portman. And it follows. I mean, it's a bit of a weird movie. It follows an actress in the mid 2010s, and Natalie Portman basically plays this actress who basically is going to play this woman called Gracie, played by Julianne Moore, who was embroiled in controversy when she was caught having sex with a 13-year-old boy at a pet store where they worked. And she spent time in prison and had children. They got married. And so basically the Natalie Portman character meets with the family to try and get into the mind of Gracie, but also forms kind of relationships with these various characters, including Joe, who is was the boy, now the 36-year-old guy, played by Charles Menton. Joe's half Korean, interestingly, and the actor himself is mixed race. His mother's from Korea, so he's been in Seoul speaking Korean, promoting the film. It's loosely inspired by the Maekay Letourneau scandal, where an American teacher abused a 12-year-old boy, and she got pregnant, had 3 children, and they were married for 14 years, and she died in 2020. So the movie premiered at the Cannes Film Festival last year in competition. It's the competition is basically full of these like established auteurs, including, of course, Todd Haynes, and where it got kind of a mixed reaction from critics. Some critics really kind of liked it, and whereas others some felt it was fascinating and layered, which I agree with, and it left others a little bit cold given the subject matter. It was nominated for Best Original Screenplay this year's Academy Awards, and the script was written by Sammy Birch and Alex Mechanic, who are actually, I didn't know this, but they're a married couple.
Okay, so a couple of adjectives you've used already: weird and fascinating.
Yeah, it is fascinating.
It sounds like quite a challenging viewing experience as well, just looking at the synopsis, one that perhaps can make people a little bit uncomfortable as well.
Yeah, and the thing is, I didn't know anything about the story actually going in. I like to go into films, like cold. Yeah. And so for the first 10 minutes, I was like, what's going on here? It made me feel really uncomfortable as I because basically they don't give you too much in the way of details at the beginning. As it gradually progresses, you get to learn more about these different characters. But I think it's quite brilliant. It delves into the kind of the psychological scars of abuse, and you see it from the abuser and from the victim, and all these kind of grey areas where, the Natalie Portman character actually talks about that when she's acting. So it's kind of quite self-reflective. It examines themes of gender, which Haynes his films are renowned for. And of course, much of it relies, of course, on the script, but of the performances as well. And Natalie Portman especially is just mesmerizing. And you tell that because she's produced the film. She's not an executive producer. She's one of the main producers. So she just puts everything into it. And I think looking at her performances over the last few years, it's just really interesting. So, I like the film a lot. It's great. It is very uncomfortable. It's intense, but it's also quirky and comical, and there's a lot of dark humor in the movie. but it never feels like inappropriate, actually. And so, yeah, again, when you've got a film where it's kind of, you're seeing it from all these different perspectives, I think that's really hard to do. And it's certainly a very memorable viewing experience.
Interesting, especially when it's tackling all these sensitive topics.
Very sensitive.
You've got to be very sensitive about how you approach them. But it looks like this film approached it in the right way for you, Jason. Darcy, what about you? Did you get a chance to watch it as well?
Yeah, I had a similar viewing experience to Jason in that I purposely didn't read any reviews before going in, and then sat down and had to kind of piece it together. I mean, the film's in some ways almost structured like a detective story, where Natalie Portman is the detective, and she's, even though she knows what's going on, but, she fishes out the details and talks to all these different characters and gets different perspectives. And as she gets more information, then we get more as well. And yet, what she's doing is somewhat exploitative as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And, maybe you might say, like, they deserve it or whatever, but I don't know. So, I mean, you never quite know exactly what you're supposed to be feeling as you're watching the film. And if you like that, if you like having your kind of sympathies pulled in multiple directions at once, and, there's an unsettling feeling beneath everything, which is not easy to create, I think, as a filmmaker. But, I mean, Todd Haynes is really good at doing that. And so as you're watching it, it's always surprising. And it's definitely not for everybody. Like, if you're just looking for some to have fun, then this will take you in unexpected places. But I did like it.
Right, so it's not light-hearted and easy-going as a film.
Definitely not.
Okay.
No, not at all. And then the Natalie Portman character, as Darcy mentioned, you start questioning her motives. Obviously, she's playing this character, and she does some questionable things. And so, you're kind of like, Darcy says, you pulled in multiple directions. And I like that about the film.
Some people are calling this film a comedy. That's the thing. And I think for some people it's probably hilarious, but I guess I'm too serious. I took it all very seriously.
I mean, the plot doesn't sound like a comedy, but perhaps it is a bit of a dark comedy for some. Jason, what do you think fans of Todd Haynes in Korea will think of this?
Yeah.
As you said, some of his previous films did do well, like Carol.
It's definitely a harder sell for sure. The themes I would say remain somewhat taboo, especially here in Korea. And when they are tackled in movies, I love Korean films, but sometimes they do come across as somewhat heavy-handed, and this is definitely not a heavy-handed approach. It's more intense and more of a slow burn. And I'm curious to see how audiences react to it. From the reaction I've seen online, I think some seem to like it very much, others less so. So I think that's kind of reflective of its reaction or response overseas and in Cannes as well. It's divisive. Others like it, others don't. I don't think it's seen as Haynes' best work, but nonetheless, I still think it's a highly accomplished feature.
Okay, so that was May, December, Jason's recommendation this week. Let's continue on now to Darcy's pick. Darcy, I understand that you're recommending a Korean independent film this week by a debut director as well. It's called Dolphin. It has the same alliterated title, Dolphin, in Korean. So, Darcy, can you tell us more about it?
Yes, the director's named Duri Bae, and it premiered last year at the Jeonju Film Festival. And it's been traveling a bit since then to a couple other festivals in Korea, the Vancouver Asian Film Festival, the Hungary Korean Film Festival. And so it opened here in theaters this week. And I mean, the marketing is kind of centered around its main star, who is Kwon Yuri, formerly of the girls group, Girls' Generation. And she's done some acting over the years, appearing in a lot of TV dramas, and in one film called No Breathing. But I mean, this is the first time that she's kind of like headlining a film, and she's the main central character. But it does have a pretty good cast of supporting characters as well. There's like Kil Hae-yeon, who's one of the great supporting actors in Korean cinema, and Hyun Woo-seok. But yeah, I mean, it's a film that really takes her perspective, and then the setting is quite important as well. So it takes place in Seocheon on the west coast near Gunsan.
So it's a rural setting. Okay, so a debut indie feature, as you said, but at the heart of it, it does star this former K-pop star. Can you tell us more about the story itself and what it's about?
Yes, so it's basically about someone who's facing a fairly difficult turning point in her life. Her best friend gets a job and moves away. Her mother, who is an adoptive mother, her birth parents died, and then she was taken into this family. Her mother gets remarried and then decides to sell the family house. And I mean, for her, that's a really big blow because that's where she feels centered. And I mean, for her, family's just really important. And then she has a younger brother, but the younger brother also wants to go to Seoul. And so, she wants to keep things together. She can feel things kind of sliding apart though. But in a way, it's not just her family, it's the whole community. And you can sense that as you're watching the film. Like, different places are closing because they don't have enough people in the town to really, support businesses. And, one of those places that's struggling a bit, but although still functioning, is a bowling alley. And she's initially asked to write this article about this bowling alley and to profile it. And so she goes and she meets the owner and gets to know the owner fairly well, and then starts unexpectedly taking up a bit of bowling herself.
Some quite timely topics then in Korea about how rural life is changing, how people are leaving rural areas, and I'm guessing this film touches upon some of those issues as well. Yeah. Quickly, where does the title come from? Dolphin, what's the meaning of it? Yeah,
I mean, I don't think it's an official bowling term, but in the movie it's described as when you throw a bowling ball, it lands in the gutter, but then when it reaches kind of the end of the lane, it pops up and knocks out one pin. And,
okay.
Which isn't supposed to count, but I mean, it's sort of a symbol for failing, but then also being a little bit lucky at the same time. And that's kind of where she is. This movie's not a success story, and it's not a movie where everything kind of gets neatly resolved in the end and everything's happy, but she has kind of her mix of failures and lucky breaks in the film, I guess.
So what do you think of it?
Yeah, I mean, the filmmaking itself is fairly straightforward. And, I don't think it was a film that was really trying to establish like a unique kind of style in it. And so in that sense, there's not too much that's unexpected, but it is the type of story and characters that you don't typically get in mainstream films. And, I did like the fact that it seemed to represent so well the fate of these types of communities. And, it's something that Korea is struggling with right now, like rural communities, young people are leaving when they can, businesses are struggling, and that's something that is only going to continue to intensify as we move into the future. So, we can read about issues like that in the newspaper, but to watch a film like this, you kind of get these images and characters in your mind that kind of, helps you relate to the issue, I guess.
Sure. Perhaps not groundbreaking, but still left an impression. Jason, I understand you caught the film as well. What do you think of it?
Yeah, it was interesting. I saw it in Jeonju last year, and when we were talking about the movies to watch, I was like, did I watch this? And then, I realised I actually watched it when I started watching it again. It was interesting to watch it because there's a lot of content out there that kind of romanticizes this process of like moving from the city to, to the countryside,
Plenty of Hollywood films.
Little Forest, and then we've got Cha 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 and various others. And, in movies sometimes, independent films, you often hear characters talking about making the move to Seoul. So, it's because, these rural areas are actually hard to make a living. And having watched Past Lives recently as well, it got me thinking about, how we have these different chapters and moving from one place to another and where we see home. And so I watched it this time from a somewhat different perspective, it's certainly intriguing and how it focuses on this town, and certainly with so much of the population in the Seoul metropolitan region, it does shed light on the difficulties that these other places are facing, owing to the low birth rate, and that's only going to get worse. It's done so through this this interesting and compelling character. Yeah, I mean, I didn't like the second half as much. It kind of, as I mentioned, the first half, sometimes, movies can be a bit heavy-handed, and there's this kind of dinner and where everything just kind of explodes.
The dinner didn't quite work,
and it just doesn't work.
Okay.
And for me, that was a bit of a letdown. It's going to happen. It's all leading up to this kind of this conflict. But so that was one of the weaker moments in the film. But overall, yes, I would recommend it as well. It's easygoing. It's got some strong moments.
Quite a contrast then to May December. Then I'm guessing.
Yeah. Oh yeah. This isn't an intense, but certainly if you like bowling, and it's also, like I said, an interesting film to watch. When comparing to features and dramas like Little Forest and Cha 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 and so on and so forth.
And briefly, what about Kwon Yuri's performance? You said it's very much centered around her.
Yeah, I thought it was good. I mean, she does have a lot of acting experience at this point, and it's an unusual character in the sense that she's very sensitive, and it's not the type of character where they're obviously trying to appeal to the audience's tastes and to be really likable. She's willing in the film to be a little prickly at times, but at other times, her commitment to this community comes across in a way that's very positive. And so, it's an intriguing character, and she pulled off the acting quite well. So, I thought it was one of the stronger points of the film.
Okay, so that was Dolphin, our second pick this week, and that is where we're going to wrap it up for Movie Spotlight. Jason, Darcy, thank you for your recommendations as always, and we'll see you again next time.
Yeah, take care.
Yeah, see you next time.